Did you know that Indiana Jones, one of the most iconic characters in cinema history, was created by the perfect storm of talent in the 1980s? Steven Spielberg's masterful direction, George Lucas's visionary storytelling, and Harrison Ford's charismatic performance, only to have his legacy systematically dismantled decades later? While the original trilogy grossed over $1.2 billion worldwide and became a cultural touchstone, the two recent attempts to revive the character have left fans disillusioned and critics questioning if Hollywood has forgotten what made the adventurous archaeologist so beloved in the first place. So, how did a franchise that once defined action-adventure cinema become a cautionary tale about Hollywood's inability to preserve its icons? Today, we're examining how Indiana Jones went from a character who belonged in a museum to one who probably should have stayed in one. What made Indiana Jones great? Before diving into where things went wrong, it's crucial to understand what made Indiana Jones such an enduring character in the first place. Created in 1981 with Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indy represented the perfect blend of vulnerability and heroism. He wasn't a superhero, he got hurt, he showed fear, and he made mistakes, but his determination and resourcefulness made him relatable and inspiring. Harrison Ford brought the character to life with a combination of physical presence, dry humor, and an everyman quality that made audiences believe a college professor could also be the world's greatest adventurer. The original trilogy, particularly Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, struck a perfect balance between serious adventure and playful humor. The films were simultaneously nostalgic for the pulp serials of the 1930s and 40s while feeling fresh and innovative. They captured a sense of wonder about history and archaeology, inspiring audiences to dream of adventure. Indy was not just running from boulders and fighting Nazis, he was connecting us to ancient mysteries and civilizations in a way that felt authentic despite the fantastical elements. Spielberg and Lucas understood that the character worked because he existed in a really specific time and context. Set primarily in the 1930s, Indiana Jones operated in a world where exploration still meant venturing into uncharted territories, where ancient artifacts held genuine mysteries, and where the line between archaeology and adventure was delightfully blurred. The supporting characters complemented Indy perfectly, from Marcus Brody's scholarly enthusiasm to Salah's loyal friendship. Most importantly, Karen Allen's Marion Ravenwood provided a romantic counterpart who matched Indy in spirit and determination. Their chemistry in Raiders set a standard that future films would struggle to meet. These relationships gave the story's emotional weight beyond the action sequences and treasure hunting. The beginning of the end. The first sign that Hollywood had lost touch with what made Indiana Jones special came in 2008 with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. After a 19-year hiatus following The Last Crusade, expectations were astronomically high for Indy's return. The film had everything going for it: Spielberg returning as director, Lucas involved in the story, Ford back in the fedora, and even the return of Karen Allen as Marion. Yet something crucial was lost in translation. The decision to set the film in 1957, shifting from the 1930s aesthetic to the atomic age, fundamentally altered the tone and visual language of the franchise. The Nazis, perfect villains for a pulp adventure, were replaced by Soviet agents who never felt as threatening or memorable. The period change wasn't just cosmetic, though. It altered the entire world that Indiana Jones inhabited, moving from a time of exploration and mystery to the beginnings of the space age and modern science. The film's most notorious moment, Indy surviving a nuclear explosion by hiding in a lead-lined refrigerator, became emblematic of the sequel's problems. While the original trilogy certainly had its implausible moments, they remained within the boundaries of their established world. Crystal Skull crossed into self-parody, destroying the careful balance of danger and adventure that made the character work. If Indy could survive a literal nuclear blast, why should audiences feel any tension when he faces any other danger? Despite these issues, Crystal Skull still had Harrison Ford's commitment to the character and occasional moments that captured some of the old magic. It grossed $790 million worldwide, suggesting that audiences were hungry for more Indiana Jones, even if the execution was flawed. But rather than learning from these missteps, Hollywood just doubled down on them when they decided to bring Indy back one more time. The final blow. In 2023, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny arrived with the promise of giving the character a proper send-off. James Mangold replaced Spielberg as director, though the legendary filmmaker remained on as a producer. Harrison Ford, now 80 years old, returned for what was billed as his final outing as the character. The marketing leaned heavily on nostalgia, promising a return to form for the beloved archaeologist. The film opens with a de-aged Harrison Ford fighting Nazis in 1944, using expensive CGI technology to recapture the character's prime years. While technically impressive, the sequence only served to remind audiences of what they'd lost, the vitality and physical presence that made the original film so captivating. The story quickly shifts to 1969, presenting audiences with a depressed, lonely Indiana Jones mourning the loss of his son and his failed marriage to Marion. Rather than building on the established character, Dial of Destiny seemed determined to deconstruct him, turning the once vibrant adventurer into a sad, bitter old man waiting to die. Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Helena Shaw, Indy's goddaughter, represented another misstep in companion casting. Unlike Marion Ravenwood, who felt like Indy's equal with genuine chemistry and mutual respect, Helena is presented as a self-centered thief who frequently betrays and dismisses Indy. The relationship lacks the warmth and camaraderie that made the partnerships in the original trilogy so effective. Even when she shows moments of growth, her character never develops the emotional connection with Indy or the audience that would make her a worthy addition to the franchise. The plot revolved around Archimedes' dial, a device capable of creating time fissures that eventually lead to full-blown time travel. This narrative choice pushed the franchise even further away from its archaeological roots than Crystal Skull did with Aliens. While the original films blended fantasy with history, they maintained a connection to real historical mysteries and religious artifacts. Time travel fundamentally changes the nature of the franchise, moving it from adventure to science fiction in a way that feels completely disconnected from the character's origins. The film's action sequences lack the geographic clarity and practical stunt work that made the original trilogy so thrilling. Set pieces often take place in murky darkness, underwater, or in poorly lit caves, creating a kind of visual muddiness that stands in stark contrast to the bright, clear action of the original films. Computer-generated effects dominate where practical stunts once prevailed, creating a glossy, animated feeling that never captures the visceral danger that Indy once faced. Even John Williams' score, while including the iconic themes we know and love, fails to create memorable new music for this final adventure. The familiar themes do heavy lifting to evoke nostalgia, but they can't disguise the fact that the film lacks the creative spark that made the original trilogy feel so special. Disney's failure. The fundamental problem underlying the decline of Indiana Jones is Hollywood's, specifically Disney's, fundamental misunderstanding of what made the character work in the first place. After acquiring Lucasfilm in 2012, Disney gained control of both Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and their handling of both franchises reveals similar patterns of creative misjudgment. Disney approached these beloved properties as IP to be monetized rather than stories to be told. The original Indiana Jones films were created because Spielberg and Lucas had genuine passion for the character and the pulp adventures he represented. Dial of Destiny feels manufactured to extend a franchise, rather than to tell a necessary story about the character. The studio's insistence on connecting new installments to the original trilogy while simultaneously trying to pass the torch to new characters created narrative confusion. Dial of Destiny couldn't decide if it wanted to be Indy's final adventure or Helena's first, resulting in a film that fails at both objectives. The legacy destruction pattern. Indiana Jones is not alone in having his legacy tarnished by ill-conceived revivals. This pattern has become increasingly common in Hollywood, particularly with properties now owned by Disney. Star Wars saw its original heroes, Luke, Han, and Leia, reduced to failures and killed off in the sequel trilogy. Alien and Terminator have seen diminishing returns with each attempted revival. For Indiana Jones specifically, the damage is particularly acute because the character is so intrinsically tied to a specific character and era. Unlike James Bond or Batman, who are designed to be reinterpreted by different performers, Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford are inseparable in the public imagination. Attempts to extend the character beyond Ford's prime years were always going to face significant challenges, but the solutions chosen, aging him into irrelevance and surrounding him with unworthy successors, only accelerated the character's decline. What could have been? The tragedy of Indiana Jones' decline is that there were better options available. If Disney were determined to revive the character, they could have taken several alternative approaches that might have preserved his legacy while still bringing him to new audiences. One option would have been to fully embrace the period setting that made the originals work. Rather than aging Indy into the 1960s, they could have told new stories set between the original films. Alternatively, they could have created a true passing of the torch by developing a new character who inherited Indy's spirit of adventure, rather than trying to force connections through family relationships or mentorship. But hey, that's just our opinion. What other beloved characters do you think Hollywood has mishandled in recent years? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into cinema's most fascinating successes and failures. This video is made by movie fans for movie fans.